Hello and welcome to the Pagan Portal Podcast, produced by Moon Books Publishing and presented by me, Rachel Patterson. If you would like to hear the audio-only version, do hop on over to Spotify. If you are watching on YouTube, please click the subscribe button or join us as a member for early access. We have a very welcome returning guest with us today, Irisanya Moon. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, folks. Irisanya Moon, pronoun she and they. I am an author, witch, priestess, soon-to-be grad student, and often vegan and cat mom. I've written a whole bunch of books for Moon Books, and I'm really excited to see how the Muses can inspire even more books. But for now, we're going to talk about that.
Yes, a fascinating topic. I will admit I know very, very little about the Muses. So perhaps we can begin with how you came to work with them.
Yeah, so the Muses are, like so many other gods or deities that I've worked with, sort of always been kind of lingering in the background. And one of the things that I really like about the things that I've written so far is that I've had these personal experiences. And I always say that my greatest spell so far, at least, was walking away from a corporate job in order to become a writer. I was trained as a writer. I was hopeful that I would do that someday, but everyone said it was impossible. And one day, bit of inspiration, perhaps exasperation, it could be a mix of those. I just walked out of a job that was well-paying, that was secure, but was with a boss I didn't really like and an organization I didn't really like. And I just kept getting these hits that I need to just write. And I just quit one Monday morning, didn't tell my husband, didn't have a plan, just quit. And the next day or like the week after, within the week, I had gotten my first writing assignment. And then from there, I have been writing now professionally for 20 years.
The rest is history, as they say.
That seems to be it. I'm writing it as we go. Mm-hmm.
I think we all are, aren't we? That was a very, very brave thing to do. Very brave.
Your 20s are a different time in which bravery is a little bit different. We don't think things through as well. But also sometimes those are the greatest points in which, for me at least, I get inspired and just act as opposed to deliberating. And is this the right thing? And I sort of follow that muse. I also have encountered them in other ways, just weird talks and things that just kept happening. And when I had quit my job, or before I quit my job, I'd also started the book The Artist's Way. And that was another way that sort of pushed me into the creative space again.
Yeah, I think when we're in our 20s, we do perhaps go more with their snap decisions.
Yeah. I'm also a Sagittarius, tends to be what keeps me alive, is to do very risky things. I mean, I'm going to also be going to grad school in Australia next year, so I haven't really changed every 20 years or so.
Keep doing it. It obviously works.
So far, so good.
So the Muses, collective name, who are they?
So there's a lot of ways to answer this. So some folks will say that they are sort of this group of inspiration. I have said in the book that they're goddesses of song and music and dance. They're the daughters of memory, or Mnemosyne, and also possibly the daughters of Zeus, or possibly related to Apollo. They're basically these, like a chorus of female presenting beings who are there to inspire folks because they have access to memory, their mama's memory. So they have access to all the information of all time. And then they are there to hopefully, possibly, if you play well with them, inspire humans to great things.
How many of them are there?
It depends who you ask. There have been various versions. There's been 3, there's been 6. I think right now I'm just going to double check the count of them because I don't want to say this incorrectly for the Muses. 6, 7, 8, 9. That's what I thought. So there's 9. And I think that it's less about how many there are and more about what their qualities are. because a lot of them overlap. So does it matter that there are a certain number? Maybe, but also, I don't know. I also like that there's separate ones because I like having like sort of a menu of different facets and qualities to tap into or get inspired by, hopefully.
A menu of deities. I like that. That's.
Yeah, I mean,
I like that.
it's sort of what I do. Yeah, I mean, it does. There were different versions of how many muses there are. So, and they've gone from really simple to something that's a bit more complicated and also sometimes just hard to remember. So some folks just focus on one muse and just talk about the muses.
Now, in your book, you mentioned that the muses are often referred to at the beginning of Greek stories. What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, I love this so much. And once I realized it, I started thinking about doing it for my own books and for my own classes. So in Theogony, Hesiod wants to write a poem about Greek mythology, about all the gods, but doesn't know where to begin, doesn't know how to start, and calls on the muses. And I think that is kind of where I would say that sort of gets highlighted the most, is that you call on the muses at the beginning, because they're the ones that not only have access to this information, but they also are the inspiration for how you tell it, inspiration for what gets told, because the muses have access to all information, but they don't necessarily share all of it. But it's more of an honorarium, sort of like, before you set the stage, you might speak with them. So in a lot of Greek ritual formats that I've seen is that Hestia might come first and some other things, but the muses are in there too, no matter who you're working with.
That kind of makes sense if they are inspiration and creativity, and you'd want them at the beginning of stories and myths and plays and anything like that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. You'd call on them in sort of a slightly deferential way, like, muses, please, inspire this thing. But it's something I really love. And now I'm thinking, how do I do that in all of my books? How do I make sure that that's coming through? Because I'd like the muses to be on my good side. So
yeah. Yeah, you don't want to upset any of the gods, but
no, I mean, I don't think the gods are too terribly upsettable, but also the muses seem like ones I definitely shouldn't,
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Which kind of leads me to the question, with general question for deity, really, but specifically for the muses. Can you call upon them if you are writing something or creating something, or should you wait for them to approach you?
Yeah, this is a really good question, because yes, I think that yes to both. I think that the muses are, inherently inspiration. So they're inspired sometimes to reach out. That's my experience. But also calling to them is also showing that you honor their wisdom. So I think that you can do a little bit of both. Do I think you should wait for a muse? I don't think so. I think that creativity is something that you show up for, and then the muses see that you're doing something and then might join. Personally, as a writer, I can't wait for inspiration to come. Sadly, I can't. Sometimes I got to finish the thing and I got to do something, and maybe the muses jump in and go, oh no, not that direction. But I had to start, at least. I had to show up. I personally think, any sort of inspiration, if I show up, it shows up, and vice versa.
Yeah, no, that having sat staring at a blank page more than once,
It's a real.
Getting a bit of a prompt from someone would be quite useful.
Oh, this book itself wrote itself so quickly that it was the book I wrote in the least amount of time with the least amount of edits. It was, and people were like, well, of course it was. And it just didn't even, I was like, oh, right. Like, I just do it. But they were like, now we're going to do this now. Yeah. Okay.
That's what you want. That would be very
It is. Oh gosh, yes. Can I have somebody like just making sure I'm staying on track? That would be great. Yeah. But I'm not good at this.
We could hire them out. I think there's a lot of people
there's a whole bunch of them. There's 9. We're good. So I don't know which one that would be, but one of them. So.
Yeah. Now, there's a word in your book, and I've seen it it's in a lot of books, epithets. bizarre word, and I have seen it a lot. And it seems the Muses have a few of them. What does the term mean, and why do they have them?
Yeah, so an epithet is, at least in Greek mythology and those writings around that, basically a title or some sort of descriptor of the whoever you're referring to. So, for example, the Muses have some, and it would just call to where their birthplace was. It would call to a certain quality, so that you could sort of understand the context in which you're working with this specific name. So a lot of other Greek gods have this. Aphrodite has a ton. Hecate has about 1 billion. And they are really helpful for me, at least, for sort of getting clarity and defining what quality I want to work with, what quality I'm interested in, the muses of this place versus that place. And because that has different energies. And it's sort of like when you do a spell and you want to kind of like bring in all the different kinds of things you could to make it successful, you might also look at the epithet and see if that's something that works for you.
I guess if you don't quite know which one to call on by name, it helps as well if you pick out the quality you want.
It's like picking an ingredient. Picking an ingredient for your intention is just another one. I think they all lead back to the Muses, but also it can also just be something that's helpful for you. Like, I'm really specifically looking at this part. And when I talk about Aphrodite, I talk about it being like her mirror ball, like whatever you shine the light on is what shines back. And sort of that's how I look at an epithet.
Now, creativity is probably the one characteristic that is associated with the Muses. Why creativity? And I'm assuming it's not just creativity. You've touched on it a little bit. There's a whole lot more to them than that.
Yeah, I mean, you have a group of 9. I think you're going to have a whole bunch of things going on. I think that for me, yes, creativity, one of those things is that creativity is important. It is not just art and writing and song. It's also problem solving. It's figuring out what to do with your life. It's deciding what happens in a relationship. How do you solve a fight? How do you, creativity is a big, big theme. I think it's very easy to limit it to art that's on the walls, art that's on in a book. But it's not just that. For me, creativity also speaks to activism. It speaks to healing. It speaks to familial, bonds and things like that. It speaks to however you navigate the world. How can I be inspired by what is known and have it mix sort of with what I know and have it help me in some way, or at least inform me in some way. The Muses for me are definitely beyond all of this. I think of the Muses as, if we think of theogony, we think of the Muses were helpful in birthing the stories that we now look at. I look at so many times, and it's only 800 lines. If we are to say that that's even just a literary device, that's still a pretty big one, because it presents all of mythology. Well, one view of it. But that's pretty darn important. That has inspired, what year is it now that we're still talking about this?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. The fact that these stories are still with us and are still being used and still referred to, and we're still learning from them. That's pretty special.
We're still arguing about them. We're still wondering what they mean. We're still making TV shows of them. We're still making movies. And we're still, trying to decide what is quote unquote true. We're still digging up artifacts from that time.
Yeah, so I do wonder sometimes if you went back and actually saw it in action, how close to the interpretations it would be.
I think it might be a shade bit more boring, but also I think most of it would. I think some of it would be way bloodier. I think that there would be I think the everyday is a lot more boring than possibly the myths make it out to be. But also, I think that the bloodshed and the conflict, I think, was more than could be put in a poem.
I hadn't thought about it from that point of view. Yeah, storytellers like to embellish, don't they? You don't tell a story. He went down, he made his lunch, came back. It's gotta have
That's works and days. Yes, that's Hesiod's other one. Works and days is more that. Yeah, I mean, you want the Iliad, you want the Odyssey. You don't want. And then I woke up late.
They are a collective, obviously, but they are also individuals. So do you work with them specifically as those individuals, or do you find it better to work with them as a collective?
So I think I have, of course, two minds about this, and probably three. I work with the Muses for most of my life until I sort of got into more Greek mythology and found out, they have other names and things. So I like the Muses for like general inspiration, I guess, like when I'm not quite sure what I need, but I need a little something. And if I kind of know more of what I need, I think working with the individual muses is a better option for me, at least. I personally have only one statue of one muse, but also a lot of them look the same. So it could be three of them. And it's the one for love poetry. Like I just resonate with Erato, but, I also really resonate with Calliope and Melpomene for most of my 20s. And I think that they also have these individual characteristics like epithets that are really helpful in certain ways. Somebody's for, humor and comedy, and someone's for astronomy. And you could choose different folks and different blends of folks. I think too, like working in partnership with a couple of them would also be interesting. Like a love poetry and Calliope, like Erato and Calliope would be a lovely little mix. And I think it's more about like what's your original intention and where is their alignment. And if it doesn't quite line up, then go for the whole group. They really come in a pack anyways. So I think that they would be more than happy to have everybody have a little input if you asked.
Can you run us through the names and the basic characteristics?
I can. I will start with our dear Calliope because she is the one that gets the most attention.
That's the name I know. That's the one I recognize.
She's the one. And she, she's like sort of the spokesperson for everyone. She's the one that, we'll think about a lot with Apollo. And she's like, thought of too as like the voice of the Muses. Her name means beautiful voice. And so she's said to have inspired the Odyssey and the Iliad. And so she's the one you'll often see with a scroll, or like a tablet or something like that. But you also see her sometimes with a lyre or some sort of musical instrument because she's associated with that, even though she's the voice, not necessarily the player. It gets very confusing. A lot of the muses have lyres in their statuary, and it's confusing. Then there is Clio, who is for history, and not necessarily, information about history, but more about like talking about the accomplishments of people. Like talking about like how history is being made. Is a one way to say that. And all the muses, I have found information about them having lovers and having children. So they are also distinct beings, not hugely fleshed out from at least what I found so far. And then there's Erato, who's for love poetry or lyrical poetry. Her name is translated to desired or lovely. Erato, of course, very connected to Eros. She's also holding a lyre and often has a lot of love symbols. When she comes out, when the muses sort of come out and become more important during the Renaissance, because there's sort of like a period of which everything sort of like dies off in Greek mythology and then comes back. And she came back at that point. There is Euterpe, which is music. She's seen with double pipes, another lyrical poetry. So you would see her, the song and she's also alongside tragedy, but not the only tragedy one. There's another one. So this one I would put more like the pipes and the music and she's seen like playing a flute often. And she's said to be a lover of Apollo. So interesting there. Melpomene is tragedy. So she's like the sad drama face, you know? And that's really how sometimes she's perceived, is that that sadness, but also of song. So singing songs of sadness and stories of sadness. She'll sometimes be holding like a dagger and a cup. So sort of like that darker sort of despair is sort of the way I look at it. And then there's polymnia or polyhymnia. There's two versions. I'm going to go with polyhymnia because I can say that, of hymns and of sacred poetry. And so she's really, the one for, her name is translated to be like one of many praises. So, but she's also associated with dance and agriculture and pantomime. So just a lot of inspiration sort of, is a big box, and everybody gets a little bit. Polyhymnia is also often veiled and sort of hidden and sort of going like this a lot, like a finger to her mouth, as though to keep everybody else like quiet and so that they could hear things. Terpsichore or terpsichore, I've heard both. I've heard a couple of others. She's of dance. So pretty straightforward there. She is the movement. Her name is translated to delightful dancing or delight in dancing. She's another one of the well-known ones, from what I understand. And so she also has a lyre, because you need music often to dance. And then there's Thalion, who is comedy. So this is the comedy drama face, and pastoral poetry. So she's, mostly known for comedy, and along with Melpomene, so tragedy and comedy. Hesiod also says that Thalia is one of the Graces. So take that as you will. And another lover of Apollo. He sees a lot of things, not only in his visions, but also in the Muses. Gather around the lyre. And then the final muse is Urania or Urania, and she's of astronomy and astrology. This is also an epithet for Aphrodite, an epithet for, I think, a couple of other deities, is this astronomy, astrology. And she is the one who, heavenly is how you translate Urania. And some people say that she's the oldest muse. So she's sort of linked again with this. Urania is linked with like this divine love or universal love. So astronomy and love. That's where Urania pops in. Urania, Urania, both work. And some say that she's been thought to be the muse of a lot of Christian poets during that time. So, yes. And she's not to be confused with Aphrodite, but there's a lot of overlap in the meanings. She has a cloak that's embroidered with stars and looks up at the sky a lot. So, I think that those are the Olympic muses, to be clear. Like, there's plenty of other muses. There's the Boeotian and another group. But let's talk about the ones that we will most likely see. And I have stickers of them. That's how popular they are. So can't tell between who's who, but they do exist. So
pretty much covers everything, though, doesn't it? I don't think they've left anything out of that.
I don't. I think that all the inspiration is for so many things. Inspired to clean up the house, inspired to, inspired in being a parent, a grandparent, some sort of aunt or uncle, etc. Inspiration is helpful all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think that they pretty much run the gamut, but you can definitely tell in how they're talking about things that that's for a particular time where people really devoted a lot of time to poetry and to art. And it's just different now.
I think when you hear the word creativity, though, you do think of art, painting, writing, drawing, but it's not, is it? It's a huge scope.
It's a huge thing. And it's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because I know that people have I don't want to say just two reactions, but two main reactions to creativity. And it's like, amazing. And, And I wanted to, sort of help inspire people too, to the idea that calling to creativity is not just you have to learn how to draw. It is that you're also calling to, opportunities to meet yourself in different ways. When I am open to something different happening, I can show up differently. When I am not afraid that I won't know what to do, then I still go forward. I'm not sort of frozen in time. So I think that's really important to me, at least, and the Muses.
Yeah, it is so much bigger than just that arts and crafts.
Right? It's not just that, but it is also that. Don't worry. The book does talk about that because that is important, I think.
In whatever form it is.
Absolutely. I say that in all my books, please. Like if I say writing and you don't want to write it, fine. Like drawing, don't do that either. I don't draw. Like I can write a poem, no problem. But when you put a whole bunch of paints in front of me, I kind of don't know what to do. It's overwhelming, and I know how to form letters and things. So I get it.
Yeah.
But creativity comes in many packages.
Yeah.
And can have many points of inspiration.
So do sort of looking at their individual characters then, do they have their own individual stories and myths, or are they always kind of grouped together in the histories?
I think that they definitely show up in different stories, but they also show up together as kind of a lump. I would say that they don't have a ton of individual reference. They have some, but they don't have hugely fleshed out stories necessarily. They definitely show up in theogony. They show up in the big stories and things like that. But in terms of sort of this differentiation, I don't think that was as important as it kind of is now. There's an interesting way in which, as I've read different things, that as you go along, it feels like there was a call for more and more. Yes, but this one can do this, but this one can't. And it starts to differentiate more as it gets more towards this side of interpretation. And I think the Graces are like that too. The Fates are like that too. It's pretty common in Greek mythology. But also, if you look, you will find separate things. And I have included quotes from various places that I found something for each muse, because they're also unique. And what could they say individually too? And plus, there's so much overlap. I wanted to see if there were ways to sort of tease that out and to create some differentiation without being too, putting them in a box. Don't put a muse in a box, I don't want to do that. At your own peril, see what happened to Pandora. Yes. So.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Let's not. No. We're good.
But the stories are important, aren't they? The myths and stories, they are important in understanding the gods, the goddesses.
Yeah. For me, it's such an important part. I think you're going to find the most about Calliope and how she features into different things. And I will always say that it's, so important to try to find stories, because it does tell you something not only about them, but also of the time. And I like to believe too that the stories that you can find are the stories that you're meant to find, because there's way more available than I have access to. And so I'm sure that everybody has a different sort of access level. And so seeking out those stories is really important, because you might find something that is really important for you. And that is also possibly really important for the person that you talked, about it to. So, and I think that is inspiration enacting itself.
Yeah. We'll all take something different from the same story as well, won't we? That's how it works.
I mean, we all relate to different things. We all have had different backgrounds, and we have different lenses. And I think that's a good thing. I think that I would really love the world to be a little bit more focused on curiosity versus trying to come up with the final answer for things. Because what happens when we write the final book on something? I don't know if I want that.
No, I love learning.
Right.
Yeah, even at my ancient age, I'm still learning things. I think it would be very boring if there wasn't anything else to discover.
I agree. I want to learn as much as possible. And, if my lifespan is connected in any way to my curiosity, I am going to be here for a while. So because obviously this book on the Muses could have been way longer because there's so much that you could talk about with each of them. But there's actually so few books on it that it's stunning to me when I first thought about doing this. It was stunning that there weren't more. There was one that I found.
I think there's quite a lot, isn't there, from across all of the pantheons. There are a lot of deities that are a bit unheard of.
And one by one, I'm going to get those books out here. I'm working on it. I am. Because it's important, I personally, I'm a little bit invested, but these are stories that are holding up other stories, it's really easy to look at Zeus as being the Olympians. It's really easy to look at Aphrodite for being like an Olympian, but there's all these other stories that are in between. And there's all these other things that happen that may or may not have influenced what ended up happening, but they're still a part of it. And when we miss that, we can miss some of the nuance of interrelationships and why things happened and how it might be helpful for us.
That's life, really, isn't it? It's not about just the main characters. It's all the supporting roles as well. That's all important.
Yes, when you see a big ritual, it's not just the ritualists, it's the people who moved the chairs, it's the people who brought the food, it's the people who did the marketing, etc.
Yeah.
It's more than just that. And I think that Greek mythology especially has a really way of reminding us of that, or at least having enough characters around that you could seek that out. Because it's more than just the flashy, charismatic ones. There are also the introverts and the folks who get sort of a bum, like they don't get treated well.
Yeah,
that's what I'll say.
Yeah, or their stories all deserve to be told. Absolutely.
I think so. I think that also it would be really lovely to focus a little less on the patriarchal structures. They are there for sure. But also, there are other things in there too that we might be able to focus more on if we didn't focus so much in some directions.
Yeah.
So
we'll get there.
Mm-hmm. We're working on it.
I have a very long list. But bit by bit, piece by piece. So I guess this question is for any gods, really. But are the Muses always benevolent, or do they have tempers, or do they get cross with us folk?
So my favorite story of the Muses is Theogony. And it is the beginning where Hesiod is this lowly little shepherd. And he's like, I want to write about all of the gods and all of history. I don't know how to do it. And calls to the Muses. So even in that story, the Muses already exist. So to be clear, that's also part of this writing. And so we're not writing new things about history. There are some things that are already known. And so the Muses think that is, Hesiod's not the person. Hesiod is this lowly shepherd just hanging out in a field, some dude that they don't really know anything about, don't really care anything about, and sort of mock him. And they mock his request. And they, in not so many words, sort of say that humans don't really get it. So why on earth would you be the person to do it? And they also see his willingness and his, I guess, reverence or earnestness in that. And so they do end up giving him like the staff of the poet so that he can write. But one of the things that they say is that, yes, we will give you words, but not all these words will be true. And so humans can't necessarily differentiate. And so that's something to know. It is something to keep in mind when thinking of what the muses do share, and to take things with perhaps a little. Well, I think it's good. Check your sources. Are the muses AI? Who knows? But the muses, they're not. But it's one of those things where I think it's a reminder to folks more than it's a malevolence. But it's a reminder that the muses too are not without fault and not without their own agenda. They are also want to inspire certain things into the world. And that's why I think this, calling to inspiration and creativity is so important. And that it's not just about art. It's also about, calling forth creativity to navigate these moments in which, is this true? Is this not? How can I bring forward some truth that I want to share in a way that will resonate with people? How can I be creative with that? How can I use the powers of, the strategies of propaganda in a way that is positive, or in a way that is supportive or problem solving, things like that. How can my creativity inspire someone else to action? And I think that's the greatest gift of all of this. Is it always benevolent? It depends who you ask.
Yeah. Which goes
I like that. But that's the Greeks. I mean, that's the ancient Greek mythology. It is, that does make sense. I wouldn't have done that, but I understand why you did it.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have had a conversation first as opposed to killing them. But I mean, efficiency, I guess. So.
Well, there is that side of it.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of emotional regulation, the ancient Greeks.
No.
Yeah.
So in your book, you do talk about the cults of the muses, which is one of those words that probably quite different these days.
Yes, thank goodness, right? Yeah. So cults are more like groups of worship, which is also what cults mean in this modern time. But they're more about, this shared worship, not this like give over yourself to a flawed human. They are, the cults for the muses were spread out. They were all across Greece. They were in Athens. They were in Arcadia. They were all over the place. And Pausanias, which I now know how to pronounce apparently, talks a lot about in description of Greece as to where different like visuals of the muses show up, and those are the places where the cults existed. So there would be celebrations to them. There would be special rituals. There would be a festival in one area, in a few areas. And basically, this was just ways for people in local areas to celebrate them and to have points of worship. Nothing really too spectacular about that, but they are, seeing where the cults emerged and where they continued is helpful to see the growth of the influence of this mythology. And again, the muses are all over the place, and so are so many other gods. But they are carved into different. There's portraits of them. There are carvings. There are also places where the muses show up, but with different names. The Renaissance did a lot of things, and it changed some of the interpretations. And so now the muses can show up in carvings and in art and things like that, but not be called the muses. So again, it's a really, it's also a big game of hide and seek for a lot of things in Greek mythology, or maybe it's more like Where's Waldo? Like they're there, but you just have to know what to look for. And the cults really help, because when you start to see like where they've spread out to, you can start to see the influence a little bit more. And there's this one sculpture in Linos that's actually got sacrifices for the muses. So that was, that's the way a lot of gods were worshipped back then, and the muses were too. But yeah, there's groves of them in the different birthplaces that the muses are attached to. There's a couple, and I mean, I can still feel it like even just in Athens, you can just sort of feel their presence because they tend to show up in art still. Like there was a whole few pieces of them that I saw. So they're very important and obviously worshipped in a lot of different places. In cults, which is not a bad thing necessarily in this context.
No. Do they have their own specific festivals? Were there particular dates where they were celebrated?
So there's one that's the primary one that I focused on and / could find, and it's called Musea because Muses.
No.
You'll also remember museum is in there too. So this festival every 4 to 5 years held at one of their birthplaces, Mount Helicon, and basically it was there was a description I found about this place called the Valley of the Muses, eastern slopes of the mountain. And basically poets from all over Greece would come and participate in the games of epic poetry and satiric poetry and tragedy and comedy, all the things for the Muses. And yeah, they would perform and they would share, and it would be in honor of the emperor of that time, in the Roman emperor of that time, because that's when that happened. And there would be statues, and they would just celebrate creativity and celebrate poetry and celebrate various other practices of that time. But it was organized by thespians, by the theater folk. And I think that one of the things it talks about was that there's one festival that was changed into a different name because then it was named for the emperor. And they were named first before the Muses, which that's a choice. That's a choice. What a weird thing. We're going to celebrate the Muses, but I'm going to introduce myself first.
No, there's some ego, isn't there?
Huh. Interesting. And then rename it to my own name. Sure. Mm-hmm. Which muse was that suggested that?
So I guess the question is, how would you define the term muse?
For me, a muse is someone or something that inspires action. I think that in that action can be so many different things because inspiration is for so many different things. I think that a muse can be a muse, capital M, but a muse can also be a person, a book, a star, the ocean, an eclipse, a word that you hear out of randomly. I think we're all muses in some way to someone else. And for me, that is something that makes a muse really easy to define and also really hard to define because that means inspiration can come from anywhere. And I think that's exciting versus overwhelming. Like I have an example of when I was traveling, my partner and I decided to do a canvas, a painting, and we each took a side and we weren't really focusing on what the other person was doing. And when we were done, we both had not similar things, but we had similar energies of things. But one of our friends, their kids came over later, saw the painting and said, "Oh my gosh, I'd like to copy that." And they're younger, And we were like, "Oh, okay, that's great." So we gave them a canvas, came back a few hours later, they had copied it. Almost stroke by stroke. And I was like, wait, are we muses now? Is that what we did? But it's really that. It's something as simple as that, which sounds silly, but also how cool that you've had an influence. The muses are influencers. If we want to get into the social media terms here, they are the original influencers. They are the ones that have the information from mom that they can bring forward when they want to. And I imagine to influence things in certain directions because it'd be hard not to.
They would. They'd all have their own YouTube channels today, wouldn't they?
#inspiration. Yeah, I think that they would be on TikTok. Are you kidding? Sure. They would be on TikTok. I mean, Calliope would have her own thing. And
talk show, everything. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Melpomene, emo musician. Like in the book, I actually name like modern folks in the entertainment space, and I kind of match them up to who I think the muse is with them. And so because I like having like a modern example too. And these are just mine. I would love to hear when people get to read it, like what their take might be or who they might think of.
Yeah.
Because I think that's an interesting conversation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's your challenge to anyone reading.
That's your challenge. It's towards the end of the book. So once you get there, let's figure out who we think the muses of today are. And also, I really focused on folks of various gender representations and things like that because I wanted to expand it out because I noticed my brain went right to like all the same kind of folks. And and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So because, what you're sort of exposed to is who you're going to think of. And so it was a really great moment to expand that too and kind of go, okay, yes, but who else?
Brilliant. They are fascinating. It's the whole idea of it as a collective, but all as individuals. Yeah, it is brilliant. So thank you for that. That's a lot of food for thought.
It's a lot. That's just the That's just scraping the surface of it too. And the cover of the book has a lot of their representations on it. And I just want to say, like, my friend did the cover and they painted it. And it's a canvas originally. So it's a gorgeous painting in person. Right. I just wanted to shout out my friend August.
It's very striking. Yeah, very striking. Brilliant. So thank you very much for doing this again. Interesting, fascinating. Lots of food for thought, as always. Thank
inspiration.
You to everyone. Yeah, inspiration. There you go. Thank you to everyone for watching and listening.
You have been listening to the Pagan Portal Podcast, a Moonbooks Publishing production. For more information, please visit our website.